Добар ден на сите.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can we get started? I can see a few more people in the background looking for a seat. Welcome to panel 4 in our today's conference, entitled as Democracy, Justice, Efficiency, Key Reforms for the European Standards. We have with us today the Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of North Macedonia, Ms. Slavica Grkovska, the Deputy Minister of Justice, Victoria Avramovska-Madic, and Professor Yeton Shasivari from the Southeast European University. We'll be talking about 3 important topics: digitalization, rule of law, and good governance. The last 2, rule of law and good governance, are in fact topics that are the fundamental ones for the idea we have of implementing the state mechanism, in the sense that whether law is used to secure equality and justice or to provide privileges. Good governance as a topic and value relates to whether we make policies based on research and data as opposed to arbitrary made decision, and whether we create systems through which we evaluate the manner in which such policies are implemented and if they achieve the goals for which they were brought and provide benefit for citizens. And incidentally, these 2 topics are incorporated in the cluster of fundamentals of the EU and are the beginning, the commencement of negotiations of candidate countries. And without any progress on these topics, we cannot speak about European opportunities. And certainly, topic number 3, digital transformation. That is to say, the new infrastructure through which both citizens and businesses can establish contacts and have access to services to be provided to them, and also digital transformation as an infrastructure for institutions themselves. That is to say, the new manner in which they manage, store, and process information they create. All of these topics are extremely important to enable a well-planned development of the countries, and therefore I think they're important, and I see the value of this panel in this regard. And in the coming 1 hour we'll be debating on these topics with my guests, and I'll start with the Deputy Prime Minister of the Government of the Republic of North Macedonia, Ms. Grkovska, with 2.5 questions in the absence of the Minister of Information Society and Administration, who could not attend. The first question relates to virtually the role of the Deputy Prime Minister's office that has been established by the last government. And the question is, what did you manage to do to improve the application of good governance principles among public office holders. I elaborated that as a principle, what has been done, where have you failed in the previous year, and most important probably, what do you think comes next to be done in the coming period? What is the vision for the coming period? Thank you for the questions. In spite of the fact that this is the last panel for today, I deem that we will all agree that it is the number one priority regarding the requirements the EU has, including the other international partners in terms of our country, because it's about a value system and the manner in which the system should work such that all the other policies can be successfully implemented and applied. The very fact that this government has decided to establish this type of office for the first time ever regarding good governance policies proves that we have become aware of the need to have focus on these issues, which unfortunately cannot take place overnight in terms of change, but a long-term process. And from the very first day of taking this position, I've continuously reiterating that we will face a challenge to establish long-term and sustainable, good quality solutions that will contribute to the good quality improvement of the system we live in, which is not easy at all, bearing in mind that we are inheriting a system that has been operating under the syntagm captured state, officially registered as such and assessed as such, and in this regard, it is even more difficult to make these changes quickly and quicker than we would wish to, quicker than what we have. The general public gained the trust in the office very quickly, seeing that impartially and very professionally, based on arguments, made statements on the public scene immediately after the establishment of our office. We had to decide if one of the ministers has broken the ethical code of the government, which is very important as a message to the general public. And I always say that we as politicians should set an example how a person holding public office should behave, what kind of attitude they should take through integrity to the benefit of all, for general good, because citizens are fed up with looking at officials who are mainly directed to their lucrative interests and personal interests rather than putting all of their energy while being in office into the well-being, regardless of the position they hold, mayors, local government officials, regardless, since this is the law. This is the role they should play to contribute to the benefit of society. One point related to the Code of Ethics is that we are obliged to train officials regarding ethics, and I'm not sure if the next government will be aware how important this position will be important. Together with USAID, we decided for the purpose of creating a sustainable system to provide a TOT on Code of Ethics regarding integrity by the General Secretariat employees. Yesterday, we issued the certificate, because I deem that since change cannot be fast and overnight, these are policies and guidelines to introduce a value system that should be continued in the coming governments, regardless of the political affiliation and party affiliation, to succeed after us. I would be proud to say that unlike last year when we had more than 170 training events for officials between July and September, this year on integrity training and a new team of Secretary General, more than 277 officials attended this training, and this process will continue further. The new Prime Minister and the new ministers should go through the same training, such that there are no excuses in the future that somebody did not know. We adopted the transparency strategy. We adopted the guidelines on transparency. We're together in collaboration with all institutions, Change Management Center and Center for Management of Public Institutions. We implemented all the guidelines requested by all the citizens, and when I say this, I inevitably link it to the digital transformation of society, because the rule of law and good governance policies are the basis for digital transformation of our society. In this way, through the guidelines, we encourage proactive transparency of institutions, which is key to reach the final phase once all the processes are digitalized and all the data and information, certainly the ones that is not sensitive and classified, shall be publicly published on the websites of institutions and accessible to citizens. But through these policies, through the transparency strategy and through these guidelines, we are influencing the change of mentality that the data and information institutions have belong to those institutions, which is a general situation right now. You go to an institution and seek some piece of information, and they behave like that's the most secret information and does not relate to citizens, while on the other hand, institutions are service for citizens. Change goes slowly, but through these systemic solutions, we are on the right track, especially when it comes to the code of ethics. Changes are visible for our office because many officials are calling us to ask for guidelines because they don't want to make a mistake, and we have great assistance by NGOs and civil society because the increased sensitivity to these issues contributes to making this public pressure higher and influencing the change and in mindset of all of us. Thank you. We talked about what has been done. What do you think was failed? What do you experience as a failure? That's the first sub-question, and the next sub-question is you sent a message that every next government should deal with maintaining of this sensitivity of public officials related to integrity standards. But what would you deem would be a success if you continued this process headed by the Good Governance Policies Office? I deem that it's very important to close the project initiated with the assistance of the British Embassy and the Change Management System for reinvention of governance, which basically is a direct policy on good governance, because we are right now facing a situation where we lack indicators based on which we can measure the performance of government programs. So oftentimes when the Prime Minister presents the government program, oftentimes various ministers tend to forget about the basic government program, and bearing in mind the fact that oftentimes we are faced with the situation where some ministries change their ministers very often within one term of office. And there is a practice where a new minister takes the position, does not fit into the basic program, and introduces a new policy. And this actually does a lot of damage. By introducing these tools of consistent implementation of the program by the government and ministries, will facilitate the work of not only the ministers but the prime ministers, because they will be able to follow and focus on the most important aspects identified in the government program, the most priority matters that are to be changed. I'm sorry for lacking the time. I'm sorry for not having enough time to establish the process of e-ID card. We established the National Digital Transformation Council. We adopted the concept of societal digital transformation. Then the roadmap was adopted in a session of the government a few days ago that identifies the short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals that should be accomplished based on that concept. The ID card concept was adopted, the plan as well, and the technical specifications. However, due to the elections, there won't be enough time to implement this project, because the e-ID card will be the basic tool that will allow access of citizens to all digital services. Thank you. My next question, let me stick to you now. The next question is related to what you've touched upon when you spoke about the project with the British Embassy and the Change Management Center. One of the remarks was the intersectorial coordination or lack thereof, or the inefficiency in this area. Since you are a Deputy Prime Minister in charge of good governance, and this is considered to be a coordinating function, what steps have been undertaken to improve collaboration between institutions in policy making, especially when we see that with the increasing complexity of reality, the need for a multidimensional policy making is increased?
I can say that we have many positive experiences, both in terms of dynamics of overcoming certain issues, some of which have been neglected for more than 30 years. We demonstrated to be an office that has the capacity to face these issues, and on many occasions, due to such coordinating role of a Deputy Prime Minister, in organizing several institutions, it's very easy to overcome an issue that has been at a standstill for decades, merely due to the fact that there was no one to convene these people, put them together at the same table, and come to a solution very quickly. Thanks to such intersectoral cooperation, will say again that we work together with the transparency of the web pages of the institutions, and I'm really proud to be able to say that it was in this way that we developed the law on restrictive measures that were adopted by the government, the law on confiscation of property in civil proceedings that was also adopted by the government yesterday, the law on anti-doping that was also adopted at the yesterday's session of the government that tackle in one part fighting corruption, but in this way we're also able to make the first step towards regulating this issue, because we are currently, until this is adopted by Parliament, one of the 3 countries that has no such law on anti-doping, that prevented many of our athletes from participating on the international scene. I hope that this will continue in the future, because it has proven to be the proper way to open up issues, because when it comes to combating corruption and organized crime, you can never say that there is only one person or one single institution in charge of that. When we have at the same time all the institutions in charge of this segment, the results are only a question of time, because these are meetings at which discussions are very open, priorities are agreed upon by the institutions in terms of what needs to be done, and I believe it is a good practice that should continue in future. I already mentioned the National Council on Digital Transformation of the Society, and I'm sure there are many other things I cannot think of right now. Thank you very much. I would now like to tackle on the rule of law. What was typical for last year were issues in the judiciary, starting with the scandal in the court council and then changes in the criminal law, resulting in a state of limitation of many cases and significant costs to be paid, borne by the government. The roads to successful governance and rule of law cannot exclude solutions. We need to do something based on what has been done thus far by the Ministry of Justice in terms of instruments used, what has not been applied properly, what should be applied, and what is not working, and what does the executive government need to do to implement these reforms. Thank you. Whenever I participate in debates or panel discussions like this, I am very glad to be able to talk about law and rule of law. We can only have rule of law when we are all aware and want of it and want to have a rule of law. We, as the Ministry of Justice and other institutions, and even the government, create many strategic documents and laws confirmed by the legislative government, but the biggest issue is the implementation and their application. This is where we always fail, although we know that there is this cluster on our road to EU, which will never end successfully if this cluster is not done as it should with the acts that we are to adopt, but not only adopt, but also implement as the EU wants us to see, starting with us as the executive branch of the government. Some of these acts we apply, some we do not. Everyone can make mistakes. This strategy of development of the judiciary that was recently adopted and adds to the previous 2017-23 strategy now is for the period between this year and 2028. It is all it all came down to analysis of what has been put on paper and is not implementable. This document, strategic-wise, is very important for the government, regardless of the future ministers that will take their positions or what the future government will be. And why am I saying this? Because this incorporates all recommendations of the EU mission, and the strategy has also been submitted to the European Commission. We received feedback and integrated those recommendations, and this remains something that we need to incorporate into the laws and implement. And you mentioned the Court Council. Yes, this is the biggest problem of the judiciary, and the events that we witness in this area, something that I now believe will be improved, and some judiciary bodies will finally start implementing the laws. And after all that, without even waiting for the reports of the
за совет или измени на законот за
assessment, we need a new law on the Court Council, especially when it comes to responsibility and disciplinary proceedings, and the election of members from among judges based on consensus. So these are some of the key laws, but what we have also started preparing and analyzing, and a group at team of professors is already working on rules as to what the laws on notaries, attorneys at law, and the entire judicial system should look like. All of these actors should equally participate and contribute to the rule of law, because without the rule of law we cannot expect to regain the trust of the citizens. We can only do that by applying the laws, and if we urge ourselves to do this, I must say that I have not found anyone here that will give us practical ideas as to how to raise awareness of these issues and make every individuals to not support and even be involved in corruption. There is a regulation in the country that in a criminal procedure regulates confiscation of property, but some citizen with their property actually override the system, and that's why we're now adopting laws that will help our combat against corruption and tax evasion. This is a topic that we can talk on for a long time, but let me just remind that all these laws that you all very well aware of, we must avoid generalizations. I have been stressing this in this role and in many TV interviews to help individuals in the judiciary, especially in the executive and legislative and the local government, to replace such individuals, because we cannot talk about judiciary and the legal professionals. They are all the same. We need to take courage and point to the individuals that are not applying the laws. Thank you. You mentioned one of the things that you mentioned as the possible ways of improving the awareness of the citizens to not become involved in corruption. In the studies of organized crimes and the size of the sanctions were introduced in the amendments to the criminal law, although in the directives that are announced of the European Commission, they envisage increasing the sanctions under the direct anti-corruption directive. There is always this parallel process of working on the criminal law. When can we expect the new one? The new criminal code is already completed, translated. I must check this with my colleagues, but it stays very soon to be sent to the European Commission for approval. In all these processes, in the screening itself, we undertook to subject many laws to screening. I will restlessly defend the policy that a strict sanction will give results. Maybe it will contribute to raising the awareness, but it does not mean that no one will repeat their offenses. This is through the confiscation, whether in criminal or civil procedures, whether it will involve other restrictive measures, they have to be sent back. So the criminal code, once we receive the feedback and recommendations from the European Commission, will send to Parliament for adoption. I hope that the working group is taking this directive into consideration, because it is truly informative in terms of what sanctions are to be expected in the member states. We are known to be quick to harmonize our laws. Yes, this criminal code is harmonized with the new directives. And let's switch to another topic, the Ministry of Justice is the main one in charge, and the Parliament adopted the law on public records and resolved the long existing problem of non-registered individuals. What is the number of such individuals, and what do you think of this process? This law, although it came from a group of MPs, was fully supported by the ministry, and this government should take pride in enacting this law, because the country, the citizens, and all the institutions involved in the implementation of the process, because the Republic of North Macedonia is the first in the European Union, the second in the world having this law. We will have no longer phantom individuals, non-registered individuals. Every citizen will have the rights to exercise these rights. All those who are not registered have been registered as files, and the process will continue to complete. So everyone will have a right to a personal ID to enjoy their social rights and healthcare rights, and simply be introduced in the system. There are no longer citizens that are not included in the system, and this law is not only in line with the EU directives, but is world and globally recognized, but helps resolve a long-standing issue very quickly, and other laws will come across the issues and cover issues that are not so much present in the public, but are very relevant for the citizens. Let me go back to Deputy Prime Minister Gerkovska. A while ago, you mentioned and talked about digitalization and digital transformation. The law on security of networks and information systems is underway. How would you define the success? What would you like to see as a result coming out of this law in some 3-4 years? The first thing that I would like to see is that the Agency for Digital Transformation is set up and operational, because it is the agency that we have been waiting for many years by all of us in this sector since following the example of other countries where it has been operational for a long time now. We have to meet the standards. We're now faced with the confusion in which every institution, in the way it believes is good, sets up and establishes the cyber security and digitalization systems will be more coordinated and centralized in the sense of having central databases so that we can be sure that our society will become much more resilient to cyber attacks, and that on the other hand we'll have an infrastructure allowing for smooth operation of digital services. Why is this important? Because these processes should be continuous. On the other hand, increasing the digital services, on the other hand, increasing the trust of citizens in the institutions, which is also related to the good governance policies, because citizens need to be sure and have trust in the institutions that they can use their digital services without having their personal data and rights endangered, that they will always have someone on the other side to assist them whenever they have problems, and even more if we are faced with a cyber attack, we have a resilient system that will ensure protection of the rights of citizens and will have no consequences on them. Thank you. And I suppose a better negotiation power in the procurement. Yes, of course, because it has been proven so far that with better coordination in the procurement processes, because as I said, procurement processes are always better if it is a case of a sizable procurement, and thus this results in budget savings. Procurements made by individual institutions are much higher than an overall one. But there is this other moment, and that is that it will relieve employees in the IT institutions from the burden. And we know that it is very difficult to keep these individuals in the ministries instead of them going to the private sector, because this will because now people in charge of these areas in the ministries are now in charge of everything. They are summoned for even the smallest issues, such as the internet is not working, I cannot open this page, and so on, all the way to implementing IT equipment procurement processes. And this is unsustainable. Sometimes the printer is not working, and then we call IT people, and we just used to call them for every little thing.
This is very rarely said, but it should be known, because within my office we did this with 5 institutions: the General Secretariat of the Government, Ministry of Education and Science, Ministry of Labor and Social Policy, the Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Interior, because first we should define and optimize the processes in order for something to be technically programmed by the programmers. First of all, the legislation must be in place for the process, define the process, optimize the process. Oftentimes, we face a situation in order to justify someone's employment, which has been for a lot of time now. We wonder about in the process, but this process should be optimized without having any confusion and destruction. However, even about that, IT persons are involved instead of legal persons, and or the strategic planning departments that should be the key ones and be transformed. This is one of the challenges ahead of us in the coming period, because right now we have a strategic planning departments that are in place formally and have one or half a person there who does not deal with strategic planning. We face a lack of project managers in institutions to manage projects not only in the area of digitalization but also general projects. We lack business analysts that are basically responsible for handling the optimization process, and inevitably we need to restructure these departments to give them the importance they should have. Professor Shasivari, we go back to the rule of law. You are representing this profession. It is a challenge for all the three powers of government. Where did the executive branch fail in the rule of law in 2020? Thank you. I greet the respected Deputy Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you for the invitation. I think that this government is reform-oriented, and this can be seen from what we've heard so far and what we've read thus far regarding any activity undertaken by the government, but certainly the rule of law as a fundamental value of our constitutional order envisaged by Article 8 of our Constitution cannot be mechanically addressed by any executive power. In my view, and in the view of my colleagues and citizens, the greatest issue currently is regaining the trust in the judiciary by the general public. Our judges do not judge on behalf and in the name of the king or in the name of an absurd notion, but in the name of citizens. From the constitutional viewpoint, Parliament represents citizens, the chief of state represents the Republic, and the government is the effective holder of the executive branch, and judges actually judge in the name of citizens, and the public trust to the judiciary is at a very low level, unfortunately, and I deem that this is a failure, maybe not a failure of this government. However, the executive branch, as an effective holder of state power, as the model of organization of our state power is like under our constitution, the government is an authority as an authorized proposing party. He is the author of more than 90% of the laws in force in our legal order, and I agree with what has been said so far. We have good laws, good legislation, solid legislation, but for me the problem with the rule of law is always connected with the abuse of law. Whenever we have this abuse, the rule of law goes to the back burner, and we as civil society and university, academia, law professors should join our forces and engage in identifying the legislation required to disable any abuse of law. Because if you have situations of abuse of law, automatically the public trust goes down. And also our European partners noted this in their latest report. So this should not sound pessimistic, however, it should be a motive plus to work on multiple dimensions in the future regarding judicial reforms. We've been having judicial reforms for 18 years now, starting back in 2005. And somehow the feeling among citizens is that we are all on a train that is traveling somewhere, but realistically it is not traveling. And if we view all the reports we have in terms of civil society organizations measuring the level of general public trust in the judiciary, certainly as a society we faced many challenges in recent periods. However, it's very important for the government to maintain the course of reform and EU orientation, because as was put by the esteemed ladies, it is our main task in terms of EU integration will be the rule of law. And here we all have some dilemmas in terms of the tasks set to us as both a state and society to fulfill and follow the EU path. Thank you. Deputy Minister has mentioned some of the judicial reforms that are taking place, will be taking place. If we talk about a situation where we can opt for one most important reform that should take place in the coming 1 or 2 years, what is the reform that should take place that will be critical for regaining the public trust, because it will take time until we fully regain the public trust. So how do you expect your success? What is the one single thing that should be taking place in the coming 1 or 2 years? In terms of the rule of law, a very important document is the strategy on the judicial system development covering the period 2024-2028. And for me, this is a very important document that obliges both the executive branch and all the other branches, especially the legislature. Why is this important? Because all the recommendations of the assessment mission were incorporated there about what has to be done and the weaknesses detected in our judicial system. And I deem that since the question was in the coming 1 to 2 years, I think that it is going to be the top priority of ours, related also to our EU integration in the future. So, to be a bit illustrative, all the activities and measures are to be undertaken are outlined there, accompanied by the time frame within which they should be fulfilled, and to record the progress of our judicial system with the only goal to have an increase in the public trust of our citizens to the judiciary.
We're also faced with strategies that are never implemented, for example, or strategies not yielding results. We have a judiciary strategy that is still unable to do anything regarding the public trust. The strategy on anti-corruption strategy is also not implemented. as it should. What do you think the executive branch of power, but also the third branch of power, that is legislative, that we do not mention that far? Because the majority of the reforms fall on the judiciary branch of power. It's in democratic states, the judicial branch is the first branch of power, and this is where the rule of law lies. So, judicial control of everything, including the legislative and executive branch of power, anything that is a source of authority or a head of state. And I believe that this strategy now comes as a result of a combination of events that took place last year. And I would not say that they only took place in the court council, although this was the most publicly exposed events. But in my view, this is a nice diagnosis, if I may call it so, by European colleagues, experts in the rule of law, judicial system, and it has been precisely detected what we need to undertake to achieve positive results. Of course, the executive branch cannot interfere with the judiciary branch of power, but the latter can provide significant assistance. Well, the former can provide significant assistance for the latter, and I believe that there is willingness of the executive branch of power to produce sound legal solutions to implement the recommendations of the European Commission. Again, I will repeat, aimed at increasing the public trust in the judicial institutions. Thank you very much. We exhausted all of the questions, and I would like now to ask you to say a few words at the end of this panel. On my behalf, I would like to thank you very much, and to just summarize by saying that there is a clear awareness of what the issues are, as well as there is among a certain number of public office holders, there is a willingness and desire to work on the improvement of the rule of law. There is a challenge when it comes to implementing the good governance standards, especially the strategic planning. We are generally not accustomed to creating policies in this way, and at the same time there is a need of support from the executive branch of power in the judicial reform processes. It would be nice to conceptualize the role of the executive branch of power as a factor of correction of the operation of the judicial branch of power. What would your brief recommendations be? What is the message that you would like taken home from this panel? I'm sure we will agree that if we want a healthy, progressive and democratic society in which the institutions will operate professionally and with integrity, we must implement the good governance policies literally in all institutions, but also in the private sector. We often forget to mention the private sector, but it has significant influence on the way in which the system works. I hope that we will soon see changes in the behavior of the judicial system. As the professor said, it is simply impossible with such a lack of trust and not functioning of judiciary to build such a system, because everyone knows that even the president of the country or anyone else can be brought to justice and accountability if they break any laws. I think that this is inevitable if we want to achieve any progress. Without that, I'm afraid we cannot talk about a normal, healthy and democratic society in which the institutions will work professionally in a transparent manner and with integrity in the interest of the citizens. Thank you. Despite the fact that we have all been agreeing for a while now that the path towards EU will take us to regaining this trust and rule of law, and this, as I said, can work only if all of us as individuals invest ourselves into it. So we should all, the business sector and the media and institutions, work on eradicating the idea of abusing the law, but only by conveying good positive messages by the media and encouraging the regain of public trust in the judicial bodies. I believe that we all agree today that something has to be done in the judicial system to regain the public trust before the public trust in other institutions can be regained. Thank you. I will only briefly say that the government needs to maintain its current orientation and towards the European future of the countries, and I believe that this clear orientation will surely yield all the results we need in the near future as a society. And citizens, because we need to be truly oriented toward the EU integration, because that's where the rule of law is, that's where the right and good governance are, and everything that comes under the known EU standards. And it is good that we have all the contacts with all the institutions of the EU, and we also share our own experiences, and it is important that the government maintains this European course and EU integration in the future. Thank you very much once again for this discussion, and this ends the first day of this conference. I thank all of you who were with us until the last panel, and I look forward to seeing you all today with more interesting panels. Thank you.
We are wrapping the first day of the conference a year of European opportunities. I'm inviting you tomorrow at the same place at 9 o'clock to follow the other 3 panels. Have a nice day.